Howdy, my name is Nolan Thomas Painter and welcome to another video. Today's topic, the stages of realization, or as I would like to say, the stages of awareness. So, what does it mean to be aware? Well, to be aware means you have some sort of reflection or some sort of understanding of something. And this understanding can come through realizations. Quite often nowadays, I'll go through these realizations. I'll be sitting down just deep in thought, right? Because it's not like I go out and do things. I just work hard all day, and then oftentimes I just sit and think to myself, and I'll journal sometimes, and I'll make these videos to help that. But I'll sit and think, and when I think, I have realizations, right? Some sort of knowledge or connection that I'll make to myself, and I'll realize, wow, something, 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 something. Now I'm a bit wiser and I'm a bit more aware. I'll give you an example here. I've been struggling a lot with my own anxiety, right? And there's been a lot of physical symptoms of my anxiety, right? Just for example, I pick and eat at my nails, so my nails are always short, right? Sometimes it's to the point where my fingers bleed, right? Poor acne because I'll pick at my face because I'm just anxious, right? So a realization would be, hey, I'm really anxious. I want to solve this problem. So let me take steps to solve this problem. And then now I understand the steps because I've since realized it through thinking, right? And to do all that, you need to care, which is it's a discussion for its own video. But essentially, making these realizations, right? In my case, it was realizing that I have this problem and I need to overcome it, and then finding those steps to overcome it allow you to be more aware. So let me get back to the principle of this video, which was the stages of awareness. So the first stage is you're not aware. The first stage is like level 1. You're not aware. So what this means is you are experiencing emotions and you're living. And throughout this, I'm going to use like a relationship with a woman as an example, right? So in this instance, you're aware. Let's say a girl talks to you, you feel happy, you're feeling good, and maybe at some point you're like, oh yeah, I'm feeling happy, I'm good. But that's it. You're not really caring about how she feels. You don't even think about how she feels. That's not a thought that comes into your mind, is her feelings. And you definitely don't even understand the feelings and their consequences. So that's stage 1. You're just existing, right? You have emotions, and then the emotions run your life. You dictate every situation off of how you're feeling. The second stage is where most people try to be. And in that stage, you are emotionally aware. So you experience emotions, right? So this girl says she loves you, or you get your heart broken, and you experience immense emotions, or emotions at a very high degree. And in these moments, you realize that you are not only experiencing these emotions, so you're self-aware because you now understand you're feeling them, but you know why you're feeling them. Now in this stage, usually you're not as developed enough to have that moment and realization with all your emotions, because usually throughout the day you'll experience a bunch of negligible emotions that you haven't really considered and realized. At that point, when you start to realize them, you move into the third tier. But essentially, you're able to understand and realize big emotions, and you're able to understand why you're experiencing those big emotions. And it's around the second tier where you can start to understand and realize emotions in others, right? Let's say you buy her a gift, right? You bring her flowers or a little teddy bear. You do that because you know it'll make her happy, and you understand that she'll be happy, and you can be empathetic. Or a loss happens and she experiences a loss, and you understand that she'll be sad, and you try to be empathetic towards her, right? So the second tier, you're starting to be empathetic, you're starting to care for people, you have a firm understanding of significant emotions, but you're not playing into consequences. Now the third tier, that one is hard. I struggle with that one. I don't think there's a single human on the entire planet who can consistently be at the third tier all day. You can't. Because that means you need to always be engaging in your emotions and always being familiar with your emotions. right? So the third tier is the extreme version of the second tier. You do not let your emotions guide anything, which is very hard. In the second tier, you might not let emotions such as your lust or your sadness or grief guide you, right? Or your desires guide you. But in the third tier, you don't let anything guide you. Nothing. You go on your own wisdom and your own careness, what you care for, which I've talked about in another video. So at this third level, as mentioned, you don't let your sadness run your life. You don't let your happiness run your life. But that doesn't mean you don't understand them, right? So in the third level, you have this double self-awareness. So not only you understand every emotion you experience, right? Like you know why you're experiencing them. You're in the moment, you are saying, "Oh yes, I'm experiencing this emotion." You're not just living the emotion, you are experiencing it and familiar with it and realizing that emotion. But you're also understanding, and here's a big one, you understand the consequences of that emotion. I'm happy, so I'm going to want to do this, right? I'm sad, so I'm going to want to do this. Here's an example. I'm lustful, so I'm going to lust. That's a very easy to understand example as a man. And on that third level, you understand the consequences of the emotions, right? Sometimes they're good consequences, sometimes they're bad consequences. You understand the result and you realize the result. And that allows you to grow a lot. Because not only you're able to then control your emotions, but you're able to then fine tune them to create the best results, which is really difficult. And here's the kicker. Not only you can do this with yourself, right? But the other half is that you can do this with other people. Now, that's not manipulation. That is absolutely not what this is. Saying that, it kind of sounded like it was, but it is absolutely not. The idea is that you can be empathetic on a level further than the person can even understand. So back to our relationship advice, right? Let's say this girl is, she's complaining about her day, right? And you're sitting there and she's complaining, right? So you're feeling like a little upset because she's complaining, but you realize that, so you don't say anything. You're not going to bother her with that. And you realize that's just emotion, that's not the truth, right? And she's upset, and you see that. But you also understand that because she's upset, she's not really looking for a solution right now. She's just looking for somebody to be caring and listen, right? And you need to realize that. That's the second tier. Third tier, you realize that she wants a solution, she doesn't want a solution, and she just wants someone to listen. She wants a listening man for her problems, not a solution at this very moment. And because you understand that, the consequences are, if you try to provide a solution, you're going to make things worse. If you try to just listen and be opening and acceptful, you will make things better and you will strengthen your relationship. And what's really good is when both of you in the relationship are at that third stage, because then you'll recognize each other and you'll realize that both of you are trying this, right? And she'll realize, hey, you're just trying to listen rather than solving my problem, which is difficult for you, and I appreciate that. But the relationship stuff is for another video. Right now, it's just an example. So in this third realization, not only you're very familiar and in tune with your own emotions, but you don't let the emotions lead you, and you're able to understand all of them and why they happen, and also you're able to understand the consequences of the emotions, both in yourself and in others. And this lets you to not only be wise to yourself so you can work harder, but it lets you be wise to others. And people start to realize this when they start to increase their own tierage, or they get better with their own awareness and start to have their own realizations. And it's incredibly healthy to do this. Because if you're familiar with your own emotions, not only you can have more closure and feel better about yourself and resolving your own problems, but if you can be more empathetic with others, which is my goal, being on that third stage and having that double self-awareness makes it easier to be empathetic. Because it's one thing to be empathetic and try to be understanding, but it's another thing to successfully do that. And you need to have a firm understanding of the consequences to be fully empathetic towards somebody, right? And that's not to say there's something wrong with being only partially empathetic, but if you really want to be there and you don't want to mess up and then realize later that you've messed up, you need to have full empathy and you need to reach that third tier. Quite often in relationships, they end because people are only at that first tier or second tier and they're just going at their emotions and they're unable to recognize each other. Or one person's at the third tier and they're fully understanding everything and the other person isn't. And even though that person at the third tier is doing everything in their power to be fully empathetic and fully understanding, the person in the second or first tier doesn't realize that, so they can't appreciate what they're doing. And quite often, that's why you see younger relationships fall apart, because the children at that age haven't yet realized that, and they haven't yet been willing to put in the effort to obtain that third level and that third tier of understanding and realization, right? That's why you see young relationships falling apart, because people, when they're a bit older, start to understand those things, even subconsciously, even though they're not sitting here in front of a phone talking about this and journaling about it. Subconsciously, they're making those connections. And that's why you see healthy relationships typically in older individuals. It's my goal to be able to express that third realization, that third awareness to myself and to other people, so I can almost constantly be in tune with myself, so I can become a better person, and so I can make the lives of other better. Because you can try so hard to make someone else's life better, but if you're not starting to understand and be fully in tune with what they would like, then you're not doing a good job. And more often than not, that will result in you following whatever you feel. And unfortunately, as a man, what you feel isn't the best solution most of the time. But that about concludes it. This was a bit of a quicker video. I thought it'd be something interesting to discuss, and maybe sometime in the future when I learn more about these 3 stages of awareness, I can discuss it a bit more. My name has been Nolan Thomas Painter. Well, always has been, and forever will be. Thank you very much for watching.